Hello all, I'm Dr. Sudhir. I'm working as a clinical head of the department for Github Hospital and also part of the Github School of Physiotherapy. Well, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, depending upon time zones we are in as of now. And we do have guests joining from around the world today for the webinar today. And today's webinar moderator is Dr. Madhuri Kasi, Director School of Physiotherapy. She comes with over 16 years of experience in this field in different settings. And she is the one actually who has taken the initiation for even starting the School of Physiotherapy under the tree of the Github University. And I'd like to hand over to Madhuri Madam to introduce the other panelist members.
Thank you, Dr. Sudhir. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you, Github, for the opportunity. Today, as you rightly said, we have an expert panel joining us from all around the world from different time zones. We have Dr. Dinesh Verma, who is a physiotherapist by background and MBA gold medalist from UK. And today he's joining from Singapore. He's an accomplished professional and entrepreneur with over 30 years of experience and holds multiple portfolios. He is the chairman of V2U Healthcare, a Singapore-based company devoted to rehabilitation technology solutions and services. He's a director of Physio Asia Therapy Center, a leading private practice physiotherapy center in Singapore. He's a consultant with EMS Physio, which is a UK manufacturer since 1927. Dr. Dinesh has a special interest in electrophysical agents and has conducted several workshops in similar topics in rehabilitation, including dysphagia management with technology across Asia, Australia, Italy, Norway, Sweden, Spain, and Mexico. He also has a keen interest in technology development and implementation, and is actively involved in the development of new technologies. He also is a founder of SCORES, which is a back care program that uses imaging, ultrasound, and pressure biofeedback as an integrated system for back and neck pain management. And he has served multiple roles in Singapore Physiotherapy Association, and currently he is including the president for Singapore Physiotherapy Association. Currently he is an honorable advisor there. Similarly, after serving different positions in WCPT or the World Physiotherapy, which is called now, after serving different roles, he is now a vice chair for the Asia Western Pacific. Dr. Dinesh also acted as co-chairperson of World Lumbopelvic Pain Congress in 2016 and 2019. He's a chairperson to organize the Asia Pacific Symposium and Workshop on Lumbopelvic Pain Management in 2019. He is also a recipient of several awards, including Physio Ratna Award from IAP India in 2014 for his excellent contributions in profession. It is such an honor to have you here, Dr. Dinesh. Welcome to the forum.
Hi, thank you. That was quite an elaborated introduction.
Your portfolio is elaborate. So many awards and such an honor.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Next, I just want to introduce Dr. Martina Spies. So Martina is a rehabilitation scientist and physical therapist by training, and she received her physical therapy diploma from the Swiss Physical Therapy School in Locomotor, master's in physical therapy sciences from University of Massachusetts, and PhD in rehabilitation sciences from the University of Florida in 2012. She has done extensive research in neuro rehab, starting her research career in the field of spinal cord injury and gait rehabilitation after her postdoc at the University Hospital of Belcrest Spinal Cord Injury Center. She has been a clinical research coordinator at Hapoma, one of the world's leading manufacturer of rehabilitation technology. She recently moved back into her academic role by joining in the Zurich University of Applied Sciences Institute of Occupational Therapy and as an associate researcher with focus on rehabilitation and assistive technologies. Martina is also one of the two co-presidents of the International Industry Society of Advanced Rehabilitation Technology and which is a non-profit organization that is dedicated to advancing healthcare and technology like robotics, virtual rehabilitation, and functional electrical stimulation. She also leads the Icert Rehab Week working group and is a member of the Icert Education Working Group. In these roles, Martina has majorly contributed to the Rehab Week conferences since 2015 and has given countless presentations worldwide about the application of rehabilitation technology. Martina strongly believes that rehabilitation technology is here to stay as it provides clear benefits to the patients and if it is applied in accordance with basic physiological concepts. Welcome, Martina, to this forum. It's such a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation. My pleasure.
Next, we have Ms. Veena Savaretti. She's an experienced Chief Technology Officer and co-founder at the Neuro Rehab VR/AR healthcare startup aimed at building virtual and augmented reality training exercises for patients with neurological disorders. Using her many years of research and development experience in AR/VR, she's helping to connect technology and healthcare to enhance patient care and rehabilitation outcomes greatly. She has a bachelor's degree in computer science and master's in game design and development from University of Texas at Dallas. And she's a chapter president for AR/VR Association at Dallas, co-organizer of the Women in AR Dallas chapter, and focuses on mentorship, skill development, and building a community of talented individuals who are enthusiastic about being a part of this emerging industry. It is such an exciting role. Welcome, Ms. Veena. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Pleasure is all mine.
So before we go any further, I just want to give a short introduction about the university. Github University has been founded 40 years back and has been delivering excellence in education and training in different disciplines, and it is NAAC accredited, is autonomous, and recognized as a scientific and research organization by Government of India. The university has over 23,000 regular full-time students, about 1,200 research scholars, and 90,000 students in distance mode at 3 different campuses in India. They are almost from all parts of the country and also internationally. It offers 245 programs at undergraduate, graduate, and doctoral levels in various disciplines. With a vision to be in the Global 100 under the guidance and vision of Mr. Srivarat, the President of Github University, and our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor M. Shivaramakrishna Garu, many initiatives have been undertaken. Towards this vision of Global 100, newly formed School of Physiotherapy is also gearing up to offer world-class higher education in physical therapy. It is doing so by collaborating with some top universities, nationally and internationally, partnering with reputed hospitals, again, nationally and abroad. In addition to, just to give a wider exposure to the students regarding the different clinical aspects, not only in India, but also abroad. We do have a Dash hospital, which is a parent teaching hospital called GIMSA, but then having these collaborations and partnerships gives wider exposure to the students. We have a curriculum which is outcome-based, which prepares the students for highest standards of practice in India and any country they choose to practice, and excellent and experienced faculty with focus on research and evidence-based practice. We have world-class infrastructure and therapeutic labs, which all need, with all the needed advanced equipment for the hands-on practice. There is a huge focus on research, right from nurturing an idea to they need needed well-equipped labs and expert guidance to the Venture Development Center. Github has it all. So anyone who is interested to know about the program can know more about it at github.edu or by contacting any of us. about today's webinar. Without any further ado, we can hear it from the experts about the technology in physiotherapy. And Dr. Din, over to you for your presentation.
Hi, guys. Can you hear me all? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. And yeah, and you can see my slides as well.
Yes.
Okay. Right. So welcome everybody. And I'm not sure what's the real profile of everyone in the group. So I'm kind of shooting the blind right now. But I believe many of you are young students of the university or aspiring physios and so on. We do have my other colleagues who are going to talk in depth about their technological developments, and I'm going to share my own experience through these years. And being a physio, how I have been drifting or shifting towards this new domain of technopreneurship. I think sometimes it is important that we have to think out of the box, right? So if you are a physio and you think you are only going to be physio and only taking care of clinic and the patient, that is not the limitation for us. So we sometimes have to break these barriers of our thought processes and think out of box and see what else can be done. And that's where the entrepreneurship comes in, and it plays an important role for anybody's overall career development. What is needed for one to be an entrepreneur is indeed, you have to be innovative for sure, but you also have to think differently. So you have to think away from others, something that is more creative. You also need to be dynamic, because if you are going to be an entrepreneur, you have to adapt to different challenges. You are required to take different roles, responsibilities, and scopes. When you start something, you are generally going to be lacking with resources. That's always the big challenge when somebody starts any product or project or even clinic. You have to play different role at the same time. And that's going to be the key for your entrepreneur journey. And what is required for you to excel and to reach your goal is your passion and your perseverance. That's what is going to make you climb to the targets or to the heights that you wish to accomplish. So what happens is, if you look at entrepreneur journey or those who are just in the school of physio or going to graduate, you may have two options. Either you follow the track and become an employee, you work in a hospital or work in a clinic or somewhere, or you find a different road and create or be on your own. It can be a entrepreneur, or it could be a business entrepreneur, or it could be any form of entrepreneur that you can take as per your interest, because what is important is what interests you. That's most important. So the technopreneur is something that evolves how we utilize the technology and our entrepreneur skills to make the combination of these two in a meaningful way and create what I call is technopreneur. So as a physio, we can play different variety of roles, and I have been fortunate in a way, as over the past year, I have been doing this quite a bit. As we are dealing with different technologies, technologies are always evolving. So if you look at this slide, and this is from EMS company in UK, which is one of the world's oldest electrotherapy device manufacturers. started in 1924. So it's 97 years making electrotherapy devices. This has been evolving over decades and decades and decades. As the technology, engineering, electronics, all are changing shape from the older version of technology to today's world of touch screen, software-driven technology. There has been a constant evolution that is taking place. And as a physio, we need to also provide input into these development. I've been fortunate to have worked with a few leading manufacturers of this scope. In early of my career, from year 2000 to 2015, I worked closely with the American brand Chattanooga, and I managed, the Asia Pacific operations, as well as participate actively into the product development. So looking at, the flow of the devices, the clinical protocols, and so on. Likewise, this is the company that I'm working closely with to give them the input in product developments. So as we are moving more towards window-based, interfaces like on your cellular phones and so on. So this is one of the examples that I've closely worked with the manufacturer to migrate from the old software platform to a much up-to-date version of softwares. And this kind of flow are very, very user-friendly. Also integrating learning from the field and understanding what is needed in the marketplace, in the clinical applications. These are some of the developments we have carried on ourselves as well. We have developed this traction system by studying high-end spinal decompression system and looking at what is working good and what is working not so good, and then able to create a solution that is cost effective, especially working in the Asian market. And that's what we come across. Something that we bring to the market doesn't have to be, at a price of, that somebody cannot afford, but make affordable technology is the key. And this is what we have done, creating a device that is feature loaded, yet simple and cost effective. If you see this table, this is very versatile table to create spinal therapy, able to adjust at different segments, different positions, supine, prone, and so on. So in terms of 3 steps that you have to always keep in mind when you are being creative is, firstly, you have to generate an idea and then work towards a prototype creation. So once your prototype is working, tested, then comes the most challenging part, is commercialization of the product. Okay, ideas, a lot of people will get, it always happen. And I have seen a lot of developments in the polytechnics and universities. They come to good level, but they keep lying in the shelves. They are not being able to make to the marketplace, and that's always a big challenge. So from prototype to commercialization is also very important aspect. And nowadays, being in medical industry, we have a lot of bottlenecks of regulatory requirements, CE mark in Europe, getting FDA in USA and other Asian countries. Every country provides a huge challenge, and that requires lots of testing and documentations, and that requires a lot of investment as well. Okay. One of the interesting development that we have done is this. This is a stabilizer. Probably some of you may have seen. Used a simple device that you put it under the lumbar spine to test the stability of the lumbar segment while you are getting patients to do back exercises. So what we created, actually, we created an electronic version of the same that is able to inflate, deflate, and measure much more accurately than a mechanical device like this. So this is digitally controlled and very accurate. And not only that, we were able to combine this with imaging ultrasound. So this is a unique concept that our team here has developed for back patients whereby we utilize imaging ultrasound to visualize the muscle and then monitor their stability through a pressure biofeedback system while they are performing their exercises. So this is how typically it will look like. You know, you are able to see on imaging ultrasound the core muscles that you're supposed to be working, such as your transverse abdominis in relation to your internal and external oblique muscles. And on the graph here, as you see on the screen, you can also see the pressure holding capability while you're performing these exercises, right? So in summary, the guru mantra for entrepreneurs is conceive it, believe it, and achieve it. So that's what you have to keep in mind while you're getting into this path of entrepreneur or technopreneur. And I will end this little presentation with this favorite quote from Shiv Khera, which is a guiding light for me. Winners don't do different things, they do things differently. So whatever you do, when you create this differentiation, you are creating a winning strategy. Keep that in mind. Wish you good luck.
Thank you so much. That was such a wonderful presentation, and that is such a different thing, as you said. It is out of the box, thinking out of the box, and that is something totally different that we, most of the physios think about, technopreneurship after their graduation. Thank you for that presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Over to Martina. Let's see, what do you have to talk about in technology?
Yes, can you please share, but not with the version that I'm with the picture, but can you please let me screen share the, you know, I'm logged in twice.
Okay.
You can, you'll be able to share the screen. Like,
okay,
no,
maybe I have to stop it.
It tells me
okay,
I cannot do
it
it while he's, okay.
Yeah, because I had to stop it. I stopped. Now I
Yeah.
think you can do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. Yes, yes, yes. Now, now I have to find the right one. Nope, that's not what I wanted. I'm sorry. Apologies. I'm sorry. I'm just behaving like I'm the first. I'm behaving as if I was in my first Zoom call. Okay, now you should be able to see it, right?
yes.
Yes. Okay, so Dr. Madhuri already said it in her introduction. I believe that rehabilitation technology has clear benefits for our patients if, and only if, we as physical therapists or the occupational therapist or any kind of therapist use it adequately and in accordance with all of the guiding principles. And that's the most important take-home message that I have for my talk today. I said it now, I'll say it again in the end, and I'll say it a couple times in between, but that's what I want you to take home from this. So first, what is Icert? Icert was founded in 2011, so we have our 10-year anniversary coming up in a few days, actually, when a bunch of companies got together in the field of rehabilitation technology, and they said, look, we are competitors in the field, but we also have very many common interests. And if we tend to these common interests together, then we can push the field forward as a whole. And if we push the field forward as a whole, every single company profits. Our newest member, actually, Ms. Veena, I'm telling you, is Harmonic Bionics. They just joined from Texas. So
Know them.
You know them, right?
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, I know Chris Prentice really well.
So we are accepting applications for new members. So maybe Neuro Rehab VR wants to think about it as well. So what do we do together? We have 5 different working groups. One is the education group, and that's actually the one in whose name I'm talking to you today. And then we have the promotion group, which promotes the field as a whole. Then we have the Rehab Week group, which is mostly responsible for organizing the Rehab Week. The Rehab Week is a conference that brings together engineers, clinicians, the industry, researchers to the same table. And the idea is that It's really important, and that goes actually into the talk that Dr. Dimesh has just given. In order to develop these devices, it is absolutely crucial that these people talk to each other. Because if the engineer develops something up there in their bubble just because it's cool and they can develop it, and the clinicians can't use it, it's of no use. And if the clinicians have requests that are technically not possible or don't make sense, then it's also of no use. So it is extremely crucial, and I'm stressing this one more time, clinicians, engineers, researchers, and the industry representatives need to sit at the same table, and they need to talk together. And that's what Rehab Week is all about. The next one is virtual because of the pandemic, and it's going to happen September 23rd to 25th. And if you're interested, please follow us on LinkedIn. You can follow both the Icert on LinkedIn as well as the Rehab Week, or you can look at rehabweek.org to find more information about our next conference. So what are rehabilitation technologies? That is the first question that we need to talk about. Rehabilitation technologies are devices or technologies that we use with the goal to get some changes, to induce changes in the human body. Normally, typically what we like to induce is neuroplasticity. Most of the time we're talking about neurorehabilitation, but it's not just that. It can also be other areas of rehabilitation. But typically you use those devices during your rehab process, but then you wean off of them because then you have this new gained functionality in your own body, and you keep going with that. And that is on the other side, we have assistive technologies. Those you use if you cannot regain the function in your own body. So for example, an assistive technology would be a prosthesis or something similar to that, or something that you use then to augment your function in activities of daily living and to assist you because your own body, to compensate for a lack of function in your own body. So typically, rehabilitation technologies are divided into robotics or non-actuated devices. Those would be, for example, devices that work with springs instead of motors. So they don't have a motor, they're not technically considered a robot, but they're called non-actuated devices. Then we have sensor-based devices. We have virtual reality. I know Veena is going to talk about that a lot. We have functional electrical stimulation that Dr. Dinesh already mentioned before, and we also have brain and spinal cord stimulation. So those are typically the categories, although beware that different categorizations also exist. I did a quick check, and please really, it's quick and dirty. I just called up a few friends and asked them, do you have devices in India? These three companies responded to me that yes, they do have devices in India, and they told me the cities, so I marked them on the map. And a bunch of them also said they don't have yet devices that they're selling in India, but they are currently in the process of either getting approval to be able to sell them in India or actually already selling them in India. So why do we do what we do? Why do we even train, and why do we get up every morning and work on these devices? Why do we try to sell them? And why do we not let these children, for example, play on the playground with their friends and not make them come to therapy so often? And actually, not too long ago, we would have just not done anything, because it was Ramón y Cajal, Santiago Ramón y Cajal. I'm sure you've heard about him in your neuro classes. He actually won the Nobel Prize for his work. He said this famous quote that in adult centers, the nerve paths are something fixed and ended and immutable, and everything may die and nothing may regenerate. So the idea was, if you have an injury to your nervous system, you cannot regenerate anything, you cannot recover any function. So what did we do as physical therapists? As a consequence, we gave the people wheelchairs, and we taught them how to use the wheelchair. We gave the people crutches, we gave the people adaptive cutlery or whatever they needed, and we taught them how to use it. So we went fully into this compensation mode. But then others, luckily other researchers came, and among them Donald Hepp, and he had this famous quote of what fires together wires together. And so then we learned everything about short-term potentiation, long-term potentiation. I'm sure you've seen that in your neuro classes. And this neuroplasticity, or this new paradigm of neuroplasticity, this now allows us to actually train and aim for recovery. So now we don't just compensate, but we try to recover. But what he said, what fires together, wires together. He didn't say what lies on the couch wires together. So it's extremely important that we know, in order to have neuroplasticity, we need repetition, repetition, repetition. And you can see here the Indian gymnast. I'm sure you all know her name much better than I do. So I talked to a gymnast once myself, and I asked her, how many times do you actually practice a new element of your routine before you show it for the first time in a competition? And she said that it's between 400 and 2,000 times, depending on how much more difficult it is than what she already mastered before. The hands in the middle, you can see they're rolling cigars. And you can see that a cigar roller, when they start in their profession, it takes them between about 25 and 30 seconds per cigar to roll it. And as they practice and practice and practice, after about 7 years and after 10 million cigars rolled, it takes them about between 5 and 10 seconds to roll one cigar. But what you also know is that if this person, like the swimmer in the bottom, who I'm sorry, forgot the name again. When I give these talk to an American audience, I always have the picture of Michael Phelps. And I read that this gentleman, whose name I forgot, is called the Indian Michael Phelps. So we can call him the Indian Michael Phelps. So if you imagine he comes to practice in the morning and he swims his 6-7 kilometers at a leisurely pace, that's not going to get into the Olympics. What he has to do is, into every single repetition, he has to put effort, effort, effort into every one of these repetitions. And so that brings us to this very simplified formula of intensity equals repetition times the effort that goes into every single repetition. So we talked about sports, we talked about cigar rolling, but there's a lot of literature that also shows that the same is true for neurorehabilitation. So we need intensity for neurorehabilitation to get where we want. And so we need intensity to have these optimal outcomes, but how do we do this in everyday clinical life? So when we look at animal studies, and often we base our decisions on animal studies, we see that animals do about 400 to 600 reaching movements. Usually they reach for these pellets. They're mice or monkeys that reach for food pellets. They usually do 400 to 600 repetitions per training session. And when the mice or rats or cats or whatever the model is train walking, they do 1,000 to 2,000 steps. If we look at what happens in real life human rehabilitation, we get to an average of 32 repetitions for upper extremity movements and an average of about 150 to 250 steps per training session. So you see there's a big, big difference. This is a study that compared 4 centers in 4 European countries. And they looked at how much training do people get in stroke rehabilitation, inpatient stroke rehabilitation in these centers. And you can see that they vary between an hour and about almost 3 hours. And what was very interesting was that the centers that had more training time, that offered more therapy time, were also the centers that had better results. That was one point. And the other thing was that how much training somebody received was not dependent on their abilities and or their functional level. It was purely dependent on management decisions and organizational matters. This is a study from Canada. And here what you can see on the left side is how much time people spent in, again, inpatient rehab after stroke with sleeping. Okay, sleeping is important. We all agree on that. Rest, ADLs, leisure, in comparison to actual therapy. And you can see the therapy actually has the smallest part. But what's even more important is on the right side, you can see each line is an individual patient. And you can see their day from 8 o'clock to 8 p.m., 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. on the x-axis. And you can see the lighter the color, the more red, the more active they were. And you can see most of these patients are actually super sedentary throughout the whole day during their inpatient rehab stay. And even when they're in therapy, they're extremely sedentary. So they have a little amount of therapy, but when they are in therapy, they're still not really actually moving. And again, the intensity of therapy had no relationship with patient factors. It was really purely, again, organizational and management that decided how much therapy they got. So we know we need intensive training to have optimal outcomes. We have difficulty providing it, but how can we do it now? And here I like to use this example from a friend of mine who is Italian, who always said, look, you can make tiramisu, you can make it and whisk the eggs like grandma used to do it with a fork, or you can use an electric mixer. If you use the electric mixer, your tiramisu is not going to taste any better. But in the same time, you can whisk a lot more eggs and you can make a lot more tiramisu, and hence you can eat a lot more tiramisu in the same amount of time, right? And that's the same thing when we talk about rehabilitation technology. So when it first was invented, the first devices were invented. The idea was, back at that time, gait therapy, locomotor training therapy had become really a big thing. And that was really tough on the therapists. And so what they said was, we let a robot do this. So we take the physical strain of the therapist, we can train longer, we can train more. And because of that, we're going to have better outcomes. But if you take that longer and more intensive out of the game, you are not going to have the same results, because nobody said robots are better than humans. They just said robots get less tired than humans. And so that's a very important point. So I realize that I'm taking up too much of your time, so I'm skipping a little bit here and I'm getting to the important points. So here comes the most important point of this presentation. So listen up. Devices have to be used in accordance with motor learning principles. That means they have to be task specific. What you do has to be task specific. What you do has to provide positive afferent feedback to the reorganization of the central nervous system. You have to start early, very early after therapy, after injury. You have this window of opportunity that you need to take care of. Intensity matters. You need many repetitions and high effort that go into each repetition. You have to always challenge the patient. You have to make sure that they're actively involved and not just passively moved by the machine. If you're talking about locomotor training, then you also need to adhere to locomotor training principles. I'm sure those are familiar to you. So again, I'm saying it again, devices have to be used according to motor learning principles, and in the case of the lower extremity, locomotor training principles if you want to reach your goal. So you as physical therapists, you cannot trade in your brain for technology. You have to, when this device is in front of you, you have to think about what you do with it and not just put the patient in and go have a coffee. So the current status is that we can use these devices to put the patient in safe and permissive environments to train. We can use the devices to make work less laborious for us as physical therapists, so we can intensify the therapy because we don't get so tired. We can use them to do parallel settings. That means I, as a physical therapist, can train with several patients at the same time, which means each individual patient gets more intensity. We can also use them, for example, to treat patients at home, which during the pandemic was a very big thing, so remote therapy. And some of these devices can do things that we can't do as humans, because unless you're an electric eel, you're going to have a hard time applying electricity to somebody's body. But what these devices cannot do as of now, or that are not very good at as of now, is they cannot replace our brain. So we cannot support therapists adequately enough yet in their clinical decision making. That's still something right now that needs to be uniquely done. But let's face it, clinical decision making is the toughest thing of our job, right? We have to keep so many things in our mind: guidelines, indications, contraindications, patient-specific factors, evidence, locomotor training principles, motor learning principles, expert knowledge about the device itself, patient-relevant factors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So in the future, what a lot of companies are working towards right now is they're looking at artificial intelligence, algorithms, big data. They're looking to analyze the data. And in the future, the goal is that physical therapists can also be supported by the technology in their clinical decision making. So I said it, these are my take-home messages. So if you get in your internships or in your practice in the future, if you get in contact with rehabilitation technology, please, please, please use them to provide a safe and permissive environment. Use them to challenge your patient. Use them according to motor learning and locomotor training principles. Use them to motivate patients. This is especially true for virtual reality scenarios. Use them to intensify therapy, and use them to treat more than one patient at a time. Please think about these things when you work with rehabilitation technology, and spread the word so that we can make sure these devices are used in an optimal manner and actually for the benefit of our patients. And with that, I thank you very much for your attention, and I'm passing on. I'm handing over.
Thank you so much. That was such an interesting presentation. And you're so right when you talk about that these devices have to be used according to the motor learning principles. Yeah, that was some kind of misconception going around that they can be used by themselves. Yes, thank you for sharing that today. Before we do have some questions coming in, but then before we take any questions, I'll have Ms. Veena speak about the very interesting virtual reality. So let's hear what you have to say about technology.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And I really loved your presentation, Marina. I feel like we should do it together from now on. You can start with the challenge intensity, because then I talk about how we are using it, making that happen in VR. We should do more together.
I would love to.
Yeah. You can see how what you spoke about segues into mine. So I'm Veena. I'm the CEO of Neuro Rehab VR. Let me share my screen quickly. Okay, guessing everybody can see that. Cool. I'm here to introduce you to the next generation of rehabilitation, just like the title of your talk was the next gen rehab. And I added a few slides from the questions you sent me. So I'm going to first start with talking about what is virtual reality and augmented reality quickly for people who might be confused. So virtual reality is when you are immersed into a virtual world. Think about all the favorite games that you play, probably Counter-Strike, GTA. You feel like you're actually inside the game and you're fully immersed. And to give you a quick overview, virtual reality started with very low tech way with just cardboard headsets. You can put your phone in, and then it evolved into the HTC Vive, Oculus Rift, and the Quest 2, where it is right now. With the second generation, we had tethered systems where you needed a computer to use the system, because the headsets itself were not as powerful, especially because the graphics take a lot of processing power to work with, and also the interactions take a lot of processing power. But now we have come to the third generation of virtual reality, where you have full standalone VR devices which are as capable as the tethered devices, and also do what you call inside-out tracking. Versus in the tethered device, you had outside-in tracking, where you had trackers outside the headset, but now all the cameras are on the headset itself. Coming to augmented reality is when you see digital objects in your real world. So imagine you take this pen, which maybe it's an augmented reality, and then you place it on a table, but you're able, it's a digital object, but you're able to see it in your real world. And the evolution of this started with small augmented reality with like Snapchat, with Pokemon and Snapchat, and now we have devices like the HoloLens and Magic Leap that are taking it further. And one of the questions I saw that you sent me, Madhuri, was what is VR, AR, and MR? So MR was coined by Microsoft. There have been a lot of abbreviations coined in this industry. Magically coined spatial computing. That's what they like to call it. This is one just to differentiate each other and what they're doing, even though the principles behind it are the same. But the biggest difference between AR and MR is augmented reality does not take into consideration the physics of your world. So when I place this pen on the table, in augmented reality, it might just fall through the table or just float in air. But with mixed reality, what happens is these headsets spatially map your surroundings. So they know exactly where your table is, where your floor is. So when you place something on the table, it actually stays on that table and conforms to the physical reality of where you are. So that's the biggest difference. Spatial computing is pretty much the same thing. There's really not much difference. And I know this industry will probably, and then they coined XR, which is extended reality, which kind of encompasses VR, AR, MR into one. So this is like quick overview of the industry and the abbreviations. And coming to serious gaming, this is another term that is good to know. Serious games, our primary objective is not fun or entertainment, but mostly you're practicing a skill, you're learning something, or using games for something like we do, which is for in rehab. So there are many applications in education, defense, aeronautics, science, and health. Walmart had this huge initiative where they're training all their employees using a virtual reality headset. So everybody is getting this exact same training and also can use their motor skills and to learn instead of just watching a video or from a human, not from a human instructor, which is also fine, but you get the same exact training from each time, which is good. In education, there's a lot of VR and AR applications for kids, especially K through 12, and also in undergrad and graduate schools. Coming back to serious gaming in the medical field, because that is what I concentrate on, there are companies that are working on 3D visualization, especially anatomical models, because it just makes sense to learn your body instead of on a 2D page. It's probably better to learn about it in the 3D space, because especially for surgeons, they have to map the 3D space into the 2D worlds right now, but they don't have to with something like the HoloLens. And there's been a lot of applications of virtual reality in defense, especially for PTSD, for veterans that are coming back after the war and they have post-traumatic stress disorder. What they usually do is something called exposure therapy. You expose them in a safe environment to war-like scenarios with the sound simulations, probably the visuals, and they're slowly getting acclimated to what they experience. And now through time, they will stop having PTSD. That's one of the applications. And the other one is VR has been used for pain reduction and distraction from pain. There has a lot of research out there that shows it reduces pain by more than 50%. So it can be used for kids who are probably getting shots or vaccines, what's happening right now, and also maybe in burn centers and cancer centers where people are going through treatments and for burn patients and getting their bandages removed or things like that, so they're distracted from the pain, and it makes that process less miserable for them. Now, coming to what we do, we create virtual reality applications for physical therapy and occupational therapy, and follow the principles of neuroplasticity. So here an example of one of our patients, Joe. He had a stroke which kind of left him paralyzed on one side, and he really needs physical therapy and intense physical therapy to be able to get back that limb function. And as Dr. Martina spoke about, neuroplasticity is a principle that we follow when we create any of the applications that we do. It suggests that things that wire together. The same principles. If a part of your brain is damaged because of a stroke or a anoxic brain injury, you can rewire your brain by physical therapy and intensive training, so that other parts of your brain can take the functionality, can learn the functionality that you lost. But again, this requires intensive physical therapy and training, and that's one of the reasons we started to build virtual reality applications for physical therapy. So we based it on the principles of neuroplasticity. We started to work with physical therapists and also patients from day one. Everything that we created was so we could see them using it, and that kind of was a feedback loop for us. They also could quickly give us feedback, so we can go iterate over applications and give it back to them and make sure it works for everyone. And the offices you see back there are actually where we work from, so it was amazing to anything that you build to see that being used by both physical therapists and our patients. And as Martina suggested, you can't take the physical therapist out of this. We rely on the physical therapist to be creative, use this in different legs. Here they're using a box, here they're using another to put a ball in the patient. They use Bosu balls. They also use it with a standing device, making sure that the patient is safe. Here in this scenario, he actually has a e-stem connected, and to also, as she's working on her therapy, she's also getting e-stem to work on those muscles. So as we started to work with a lot of these patients, because in the clinic that we started in, we saw a lot of stroke, spinal cord injury, people who have Parkinson's and MS, and each of them had really different diagnoses. You must have heard the term that one brain injury. If you see one brain injury, you've only seen one brain injury, because each of the diagnoses is so different from each other, and the functional levels of the patient are so different. So we had to create applications such that people with low function, that somebody in inpatient rehab can use it too, and somebody in outpatient rehab and have been through certain amounts of physical therapy and are post rehab can still use it. We had spinal cord injury patients, which are athletes. They wanted something more intense and challenging to use. Then we had very low functioning patients who we had to bring down the intensity of our applications, and we were able to build that through the years. And just talking about what we have built right now, we have a virtual reality device that is fully portable and can be used at home and also in the clinical setting. The gamified therapy is what makes it fun for the patient and also provides a new tool for the therapist. Like I said, we're not taking the therapist out of this. We love the creativity of physical therapists. And once we build something and give it to them, they've used it in different ways that we as the developers would have never thought about. So we love that. And you can provide the challenge, you can provide intensity and repetition. As Martina said, repetition is really, really important. And being focused during that repetition is more important than anything else, because sometimes if you are in a physical therapy setting in a clinic, the patients come in, they're working on the therapy, but talking to the therapist about the day, and they're not really focused on what they're doing. But when you put on a VR headset, you really don't have any other distractions around you, and you're focused on the task. So you can get repetitions, but also the focus and effort and the intensity of the training, which I'll talk about in a second, and also provide feedback for the patients, because here they get visual, sound feedback, haptic feedback, and they're getting both intrinsic and external feedback from using the systems. And there is a vast body of research that shows that virtual reality actually works and helps people both using it with traditional therapy and also on its own. We've had case studies where some people have used only VR therapy and they've made amazing gains. Right now in the US, there are CPT codes that you can use for reimbursement, and it's being reimbursed by insurance. And we've also built a HIPAA compliant platform, an encrypted platform, to make sure you're collecting secure patient data. Because one thing that our system does is you can collect range of motion data, that kinematic data from when the patient uses it, and so that you can show progress. Now, just talking about why virtual reality is a good modality. for physical therapy, as I mentioned, it's fun and engaging, and also functional at the same time. You can transport your patients to into space, to the beach, or a grocery store, wherever they would like to do physical therapy. And I said they have visual feedback, tactile feedback, and also we can recreate how it would sound in a grocery store, especially for our stroke patients who are trying to get integrated back into society. Depending on which part of the brains that got affected, they might not like noisy situations. And there's a safe here using virtual reality. Now you can recreate that whole store for them, make sure that they are getting exposed to that sounds and smells and everything, not smell at this point, sounds in the situation that they would probably be in the real world. And you can truly immerse the patient in the environment and feel like they're transported to a new place and practice in that situation. We've also seen patients do more than they thought they ever could because they forget the bias of their diagnosis and the inabilities and the inhibitions that they have, especially for chronic patients who have not, they've been in the same, they've plateaued in their physical therapy, probably they've plateaued in the functional gains that they're doing, and they know that they can only extend their hand so much or flex their hand so much, and they're kind of stuck in that. But once you put them in the headset, they forget about what they cannot do, and we've seen them doing more, which is an amazing thing. We really don't know why that happens, but that's a phenomenon we keep seeing happen in our clinics too. And then also with a lot of patients that come in with pain and anxiety, they forget about that, and then now they're able to actually get through their physical therapy, and it's very rewarding for us to watch them grow and reach their goals. And the other thing that gaming provides is motivation. We have some patients who are, much more motivated than others. It also depends on the physical therapist and how they're working with the patient. But once they reach a certain score, depending on what application that they're doing, they keep coming back and they want to beat their previous score. So what's happening here, the competitiveness and the motivation is helping with intensity of training, repetition, and also keeping them challenged. Because what we do is we make our environment such that every time they come in, the therapist can start them at the next level. So they're always challenged. So again, working on that principle of neuroplasticity so that they're actually having those gains. So I can give a quick example as to what happened with one of our patients. He was a TBI patient, actually a gunshot wound, and he needed to go back to up. He lost his function in the upper extremity, and he was doing one of our grocery shopping applications. He came in, we had 4 levels. He's a very motivated individual. We kind of added a timer on there so that, each level is only 2 minutes. And he at first got frustrated that it was only 2 minutes, and he didn't have like all the time he wanted before we started that added the timer. So he got frustrated with what we were doing, but he took it as a challenge. So the first session, he was able to just get through the first level, second session, the first and second. And by the 4th session, he made it through all the levels. And now we had to go and build more levels for him, which is, it's great for us. It's amazing for us. So then, and just to know that they're motivated, and then now they're getting back that limb function too, because intrinsically they're motivated on their own, which I'm sure as physical therapists, it's really hard to motivate some patients to keep going. And you can do that with therapy. Here's a little video. Let me share sound. There you go.
So Deidre's here working on the game Foul Play.
Can everybody hear the sound? Okay.
Cool. So Deidre's here working on the game Foul Play. What we're trying to accomplish her with this game is her sequencing and purposeful coordination of her movements. We're also working on her dynamic standing balance, her weight shifting abilities, range of motion throughout her legs, as well as improving trunk mobility. Lots of good things going on with this game for her. Good, DJ. Ooh.
So you can see with just one of our applications, they were able to work on intensity, repetition, lateral movements, trunk mobility. So with this video, you can see that there is so much you can do with just one of the apps that we have built. And as a therapist, you can customize it according to how the patient is doing too.
So Deidre's.
Go to the next one. And as you are physical therapist, you know, for a lot of patients, and what Martina just said, everyday living activities are one of the most important things patients work on so that they can get back into society, do what they could do probably before that incident, or be able to be independent. So there is really good transfer of skills from the virtual world to the real world, because one, instead of watching a video, probably clicking on, you know, going through a scenario, you're actually using your motor skills and you're able to embody, encode those neural pathways, doing exactly what you do in the real one. And that also helps with, for our patients who are older, they're able to figure out what to do in this gaming scenario than having a joystick in their hand, because it's very natural, something that they would actually do. So, and also in virtual reality, people embody their virtual avatars, which is amazing to see. For a patient in the virtual world, their hands could look blue, or they could be holding swords in their hand, but they actually embody those virtual avatars as their own and able to see their limbs move and do more, and all of that translates to the real world. And as Martina also said, she spoke about how you can do things in using robotics and virtuality that you would not be able to do otherwise. So what we like to call is use the virtualness of VR to our advantage. That is, in virtual reality, what we can do is we can scale up the movements of a patient, especially for our low functioning patients. If they're able to move their only hand only 10 degrees, we can scale it up in VR to make it look like they're doing more. And for them, that feedback really helps. And now they're able to get that confidence that they can actually do more and probably complete a task that they've not been able to do before. And we can also use mirror therapy. I'm sure all of you know about mirror therapy. What we do in VR for mirror therapy is take it to the next level. We duplicate everything that your right hand, your non-affected hand might do into your affected hand, so that you're able to pick up items, interact with items using your left virtual hand, which is the affected hand, and you are actually doing real things with it and getting haptic feedback, which is better than just looking at your hand, your non-affected hand, do movements of your non-affected hand. So that's one transfer of skills to the real world. And as I said before, distraction, pain, stress, and anxiety is really important, because we had patients that came into the clinic, they had shoulder pain or hip pain. They didn't want to do their physical therapy. They were just there because their caretakers wanted them to go and do their therapy. But with them, they are distracted from the pain now, and they're actually able to get through to their therapy sessions. And our pediatric patients are one of our most enthusiastic patients when it comes to physical therapy using virtual reality. They love it. They're once they start using the apps, they know exactly which app they want to use, come back and tell the therapist, this is what I want to do today, kind of lead the therapy, which is good even for the therapist. So what our therapists do is they use the virtual reality therapy as a reward system. So they get through the boring parts, maybe of therapy where they don't want to do it, and they come to virtual reality as a reward, but they're still working on their functional task, even while they're in VR. So they're just getting more intensity, more challenge. And especially for our kiddos, they get distracted really quickly. We had some kids when they also have a brain injury, sometimes they also have ADHD. And once they're doing therapy, somebody walks by, they get distracted, and it takes about 10 minutes for the therapist to bring their focus back into what they're doing. But with VR, they're not distracted anymore. They're really focused on the task that they're doing. And it has been great to see that happen. Here's another video of our therapist using VR with a pediatric patient.
You know, when you add a task, you put a patient.
Okay, you can still hear right here.
In the VR world, we see improved performance with standing balance. She's doing much better right now with this than she would be if we were just standing stationary doing nothing, just trying to count and watch the clock. So it's a big motivator, and it makes therapy fun, because a big thing with pediatrics is trying to get the most out of them for an entire hour, sometimes 2 hours. So this is an easy way to do that.
Wait, what's that, Chris?
Standing posture, trunk control, leg strength. She's reaching out to her limits of stability here. Really challenging her balance. Sit down. Pop up quick. Good. Like, she doesn't come up that fast when we're not in this. So she gets excited and pops up fast. Because we're working on power with her, like rate of force production. The other way, to your left.
I'm not sure if you heard that they're working on sitting down and getting up quick, and she does that faster in VR just so that she wants to get back into the game when she stands up again. So that motivates her into getting up. The only thing I would suggest is be careful, therapists. We've had a few therapists get hit on their head from kids being really into it and get are like so focused in their VR therapy. I just wanted to touch upon a couple case studies that we have had. This patient had a stroke, left CVA, and before her VR integration, she could hold her balance for 60 seconds, eyes open, approximately 30 seconds, eyes closed, and her Berg balance score was 30/56. And she had a goal of unscrewing 5 screws in 5 minutes. And after her VR integration, she was a really motivated patient and also had tremors. So that's something that the therapist was working on with her. And after VR integration, she was able to hold a balance for 2 minutes, eyes open, 60 seconds, eyes closed, and her Berg balance score improved and achieved her a fine motor skill of unscrewing 5 screws in 5 minutes. And it also decreased her intentional tremors. We could see that happening just in 5 minutes of VR therapy. We could see her tremors going down, and there was retention right after. But then she had to keep, you still have to keep coming back and doing the therapy to have a longer term retention of the decreased tremors. Here's another patient that we have had, undiagnosed spinocerebellar disorder. She's had this for a long, long time. Onset was in 1991. So she's been in therapy many times, trying to get better. But I think she had the most gains when she started to add VR therapy into her treatment plan. So her goals was standing balance, dynamic balance. She just wanted to be independent, ambulation, being able to walk longer distances, and also fine motor skills. And she has cerebral ataxia, which is a SARA score is connected to that. And then for her, because of her goals, our therapists usually see the goals of the patients and then pick the applications that they would do in virtual reality. So for her, it was rhythmic, dynamic balance, functional reaching apps. She had amazing results. Before her VR integration, her SARA score was 20. She was able to ambulate 30 feet with an assistive device and had less than 30 seconds of standing balance. And again, she had the same goal of unscrewing 5 screws. Post VR integration, after just a few weeks, her SARA score improved. She was able to walk 210 feet, ambulation, and able to hold her balance from 2 minutes, 30 seconds from the previous just 30 seconds, and able to unscrew 5 screws. And she reached her goal. She was also a patient that was really, really motivated. So she came in, and as Martina spoke about, the amount of therapy that you get also matters a lot. She was one patient that used to come in, do her normal therapy, and do 1 hour of VR therapy on top of the normal therapy. So that's why you can see the gains that she's had. So I wouldn't say that everybody who goes into VR will have the same gains. It again depends on the amount of therapy that you're doing, the amount of repetitions, the challenge, because as she started getting better, she was doing harder and harder levels, and then the intensity of training too, which is all neuroplastic principles that you can embody into virtual reality. And the other part that I can touch on quickly is the data analytics piece too. Physical therapists in the US, at least, I'm not sure how it is in outside of the US, they do evals every 2 weeks. That's when you get to know reports as to how the patient is progressing. But with virtual reality, you can get precise kinematic data and range of motion data that you can already use, and also use it as a feedback system for the patients. Because once they finish a scenario, I can give an example of a gait training ambulation app that we have. They have to pick up coins, and and we also track how much distance that they have traveled in the virtual world. So right after the scenario, for 5 minutes of walking, we can give them, this is the amount of distance you traveled, this is the amount of points you picked up this time, and then your progress from your previous time. So with that feedback, we have seen patients wanting to do another 5 minutes and beat their previous score, which is amazing. And also with the data analytics, you can generate reports for insurance reimbursement, because you can see how, at least in the US, Medicare and CMS have new rules as to patient experience, and value-based care is becoming, an importance, and I'm sure it is in the other parts of the world too. And making sure that they're actually progressing is important too. And with with quick data analytics like that, it's easy for the therapist to document that progress. That's all I have for today. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. That was so much fun. That is making therapy fun for the patient and also for the therapist, because it is bringing in more better outcomes, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So
and
cool.
Like always say, we are not taking the therapist out. We're just providing the therapist a new tool and new modality that they can use with their patients to make their life easier. And that's kind of what we want to do and increase that patient experience.
And not to strike off the sentence what previously we discussed about, that machines doesn't bring better outcomes, but because of the more repetitions, making the patient more engaged in the therapy, do you agree that it will bring a little more better outcomes?
I mean, exactly. And that's exactly what we see with all our patients too, because they're more engaged, because they're getting more intensity of training. And then also they're staying in therapy for consecutive longer amounts of time. So I'm sure the patients you've worked in, maybe after 5 minutes of therapy, they're exhausted and they want to take a break. Here, they're staying in therapy for longer amounts. Their cardiovascular efficiency is getting better. The stamina is getting better. And now all of that leads to better recovery and faster recovery too.
That's wonderful. I believe we do have a question in the chat. Dr. Sudhir, do you want to ask that question? Or do we have any more questions coming in from the audience? I wish we had taken the questions right soon after each of the speakers' presentation, but then we wouldn't have completed, is what I wanted to. So maybe we can just take the questions at this time. Dr. Sudhir?
Yes, ma'am. Sure. So I do have a question to Dr. Veena Savaretti. I have heard about Rehab Week as one of the most happening events, and what exactly is in it for the students, madam?
So, Dr. Sudhir, unfortunately, I don't understand you very well, but I believe you asked about the Rehab Week and what it is for students. Is that correct? Did I understand it correctly? So, yes. Very good, thank you. So yes, the Rehab Week is something that is super dear to my heart. I've been involved in the organization since 2015, and it's one of my babies apart from my daughter. And this year I checked it, the student price would be 125 euros, I believe. Yeah, I think it's in euro. I'm not sure, to be honest, if it's euros or dollars. But what we're going to do this year, because it's a virtual conference, we're going to have 3 sessions and 3 days. And each day has what we call an A block and a B block. The A block will be in the afternoon hours for Asia and in the morning hours for Europe. And the B block will be almost a copy of it, not entirely, because there might be different speakers in the different blocks, but the topics will be a copy of it in the afternoon for Europe and the AM for the Americas. So that's our structure. And what we've really trying to push is we want to make it, and we created a hashtag, virtual but interactive, because I mean, we've all been to these conferences now over a year, and the normal conference presentations, when people are just talking, you at the same time you're doing your laundry, you lose focus. And so what we really want to do is we want to have different formats than your typical formats. We want to have interactive formats. So one of the things, and that would be super cool for students, is that we're going to have an interactive poster session that we're going to do in a platform called Remo. So you can walk around in the poster exhibition with your avatar. You can get close to the poster presenter that you would like to talk to, and then the cameras will pop up And then you can actually have a conversation one-on-one or one-on-two with the poster presenter about your poster. And we're not only going to accept the typical scientific posters, but we're also going to accept clinical posters. So clinicians can submit something that is not research, but that they still think is worth sharing with the rehabilitation technology population or rehabilitation technology community. And we have a category called industry posters. So all of our industry partners can also submit a poster and then actually also be in this in this poster session and discuss with the other people about their technologies, etc. So that's what we're trying to do. The other thing we're doing is we're going to have live broadcasts from clinics. So you're going to have the chance to visit the European Neuroscience Center in Madrid in Spain virtually, and Hobbs Rehabilitation in the UK. So those are the two that are confirmed. And you will be able to discuss with the people there about how they integrate the technology into their daily clinical practice. We're discussing with one center from Asia, and we're discussing with a couple centers from the Americas, so we can have that too, but those are not confirmed yet. And then the last format that we're going to have is where we're going to have a 15-minute input presentation from somebody, from a speaker, and then the attendees are going to be split up in groups of 10 to 15 attendees. And then we're going to have like a workshop-like discussion in these small groups, and then they're going to come together again and share the results from their discussions. So that's how we're trying to make this conference interactive, to get people engaged, to get them off their couches. They're still on their computers, but that's our goal for Rehab Week 2021 virtual.
Okay.
Sorry, long answer.
No, that's very well elaborated. Thank you so much for this speech.
Thank you.
And I would like to ask Ms. Veena, actually, after listening to the session which was given by you, I really did find visual reality very exciting. And after completion of Bachelor's in Physical Therapy program, how can any student, or myself, like get into this virtual reality development for VR for rehab?
Okay, if I understood the question right, it's about once they finish their physical therapy, are they thinking of adding virtual reality to their practice or developing the applications? I guess I'm confused there.
Well, okay, I understand. Well, in bachelor's program, let's talk about India. In bachelor's program, we do not have anything about the virtual reality and everything. Maybe like in a few slides of discussion verbally, not practically. So in case if the student wants to pursue additional courses in virtual reality to add into his rehabilitation protocols, is there any other specific way or pathway for a student to have a particular pattern of rehabilitation?
Got it. So I know virtual reality is not fully mainstream yet in the physical therapy world or yet, but what we are seeing right now is we are getting a lot of input from the universities right here who want to add it to their curriculum. So use one of our systems to actually coach the therapist in during the as they go through school. One thing that you can do is there is a lot of content out there. You can look at we have a lot of videos, blog posts, and research papers on our website. That's one way to start learning about it and how you can integrate VR into your clinical setting. At some point, we will expand to India. We definitely have that on our roadmap. We just have to figure logistics and pricing and all of those things. So we'll definitely, so that at some point, hopefully before they finish their bachelor's, VR will be in India. Other than that, we also recently released the first ever CU course in the US. There's something called, I'll add it to the chat. Actually, I just went to Madhuri right now. I guess you can share it. Something called, continued educational units. That's something that each physical therapist have to do every year. They have certain points that they have to keep their license. I'm not sure how it works in India, but this is a course that your students can go through. Other than that, if you're thinking of developing, just want to get into gaming, developing applications, you definitely need computer science courses. That's kind of what I went through, learned computer science background. I started to build games, and this is how kind of started the company. I hope that answered the question.
That's interesting.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Madhu. And Dr. Dinesh Verma, I would like to ask you, with advanced equipment, software taking care of many aspects of the physio, what will be the role of a physio in the new age, you think? Dr. Verma?
We can't hear you. I believe you're muted.
Sorry. Yes, I've been quiet for quite some time, so the mute. So yes, I guess software has become part of our lives in any industry, not just physical therapy, wherever you look at it. From the morning till the night, you are actually dealing with software. Look at your mobile phones and whatsoever gadgets you're playing with. The television are now running on softwares as well. So are the physical therapy devices, from electrotherapy devices to the higher end, whatever you pick it up. In our own experiences, what we see, really, software gives you an edge to get more validated data. And your skill is now going to make a shift from analyzing this data and to create a meaning for the patient. That's important. To give you a practical example, what we do in our practices, we have a 3D gait lab. And when we do the assessment of the patient on 3D gait lab, and it helps us to identify if somebody comes with a knee pain, but the pathologies are actually lying into the ankle component, or the foot component, as per se. So it gives us more realistic picture through the software analysis and makes us take a decision what is the right intervention for the patient. So rather than addressing the knee, we start looking at the foot and look at whether I correct his foot biomechanics. That will have impact onto the knee. So this is where we have to look at how softwares are going to empower physios in their ability to treat the patient better. Is that okay?
Yes, sir, definitely. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe because we are running late, we'll take one last question. And I think this question would apply to all of you. There is a participant in the audience which asks, when will all this technology come to India? And I think, Martina, you did find out about all of those some of the technologies which are available in India, but otherwise, all the other advanced technologies that you were talking about, and AR, VR, and Dr. Dinesh's course back program. So when do you think it will come to India? Dr. Martina?
Yeah, that's really difficult for me to say. And I think, so it's going to be a little bit like in the rest of the world, right? So the big, huge, expensive devices, it makes sense that they're in big centers, in big cities where they have a lot of volume where they are used. And then you have anything down to a small FES stimulator that you can lend to the patient, or that even patients can purchase themselves. There are some devices for home use. I don't know, Veena, what your price category is, but we have other companies in Icert already. They have home training devices for like around 100, 200 US dollars. And so probably these devices would be more easily and more quickly come to smaller cities and to smaller centers. But the question is, and I admit I'm not really familiar, probably Veena can tell you more, is about the hurdles that are put on approvals. So all of these devices are medical devices, and they need to undergo some approval before by the local authorities before you are allowed to sell them in the country. And some countries are tougher and some countries are not so tough. Some require more paperwork and others require less. And I guess, Veena, as you guys are in the process of getting this approval, you can give much better information about that than me.
Yeah, definitely. Our device is an FDA registered device. So we've already been through the approval process for the US, and that's why we're able to market it in the US right now. We get a lot of people coming to our website from India, Europe, the Middle East, and also Canada, which is amazing, but also sad because we really can't sell in other places other than the US right now. But from what I've heard, I think Dr. Dinesh should be able to give us better information. It would not be too hard for us to get into India and Middle East because once you're FDA approved, the paperwork is less. But for Europe, you still have to do something called the CE mark, and we are working through that process, which is again a lot of paperwork, making sure pretty much going from square one for the FDA process that we went through for our systems. And even in Europe, you still have to, once you get the whole European CE mark, you still have to go to each country and figure out what their exact regulation is in Europe to be able to sell. I'm not sure how it is in Singapore. I definitely want to talk to you, Dr. Dinesh, about that and see if it's possible. So I would say we'll probably come to India sooner than Europe at this point.
Yeah, I think as far as India is concerned, I think you guys are a bit fortunate. There are very little regulatory hurdles. Markets are still pretty open. At the moment, regulatory restrictions are more confined toward invasive technologies, implants, those kind of areas.
Right.
So the physical therapy devices are very easily able to get into Indian market. I have not seen any problems actually. So that's good news.
Right.
Yeah. So apart from that, yes, I think place like our Singapore, yes, we have regulatory requirements, especially nowadays the concern is about data protection. I think we are very particular about confidentiality, the data protection. I think this has become big issue for IT-based technologies to actually be adopted rather than anything else. Yes, and as far as our little innovation scores, we are ready to get into India, and it's affordable technology. It's not a rocket science ticket products. You look at the whole spinal decompression, the imaging ultrasound, and all. We look about close to $35,000 to $40,000 range, which is quite affordable, I would say. So what is important is, the technology is one aspect of it. I think implementing technology in the right way is the key. I can give somebody the best of the software, but if you don't know how to operate the software, it's of no meaning. So I will summarize it here. Thank you.
You're speaking my mind, Dr. Dinesh. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. That was such an exciting talk about all the exciting devices that we use in physiotherapy. So if we already are 30 minutes over our planned time, and I understand that it is quite late for some of you from different parts of the world. So if anyone has any further questions, you can email to us, or you can put it in the chat and we'll get it later and we'll reply back to you. So thank you so much, all of you, for joining us today. And Dr. Sudhir, over to you for a vote of thanks.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So firstly, I would like to thank Dr. Madhuri Kasim, Madam, our Director, Github School of Physiotherapy, to organize this webinar, which helps enlighten the students to understand the advancements and importance and scope of the physiotherapy in society. And I take the privilege in thanking our panelists, Dr. Martina Space, Ms. Veena Savaretti, Dr. Dinesh Verma, for taking their valuable time to share their advancements in the technology which they use in daily rehabilitation in making lives better, especially in spite of their busy schedules and the time zones and everything. And most importantly, I would like to thank all the students who attended this webinar in hoping to carve their future as physiotherapists. Wishing you all very best and have a nice rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, one and all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for having
Bye.
us. Yeah.
Thank
Have
you,
a good day,
guys.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
You too.
Bye.